So games are going up to 70 bucks. I thought it might be useful to walk through where that $70 goes. Well, the first thing to know is that once you factor in price reductions and sales and back catalog, the average price of a game isn't really $70. It's probably going to be more like $50. And then if you're in a store, there's about $15 of other stuff that comes out. This is things like manufacturing costs and shipping and the cut of the actual retailer. This part is probably the most variable thing I have in this video. The retailer cut changes over the lifetime of their sales of the game. Also, this is one of the few areas where there are some fixed costs. You don't save money in terms of shipping or manufacturing just because you've discounted the price of the game. That's pretty fixed. Now, it's interesting, $15 isn't exact for this, but when you actually look and compare that to digital distribution, in digital distribution, they take exactly 30%, which is $15. That's the cut that Steam or other platform holders like Xbox Live or the PlayStation Store take. Now, Epic is taking less. They're only taking 15%, which would cut that down to $7.50. But basically, most of the platform holders are taking about 30%. I suspect, though I have no proof of this, that 30% was probably set to roughly match the cut that was going to the process of getting a game into retail. Publishers actually like this new way better. And why? Well, because there's no inventory risk, no manufacturing, no shipping, they can actually account for this differently. Rather than treat this as a $50 game where 30% is going into cost of goods and manufacturing and shipping and the process of making money, also called cost of goods and services or COGS, they're able to actually treat this as a $35 game or product. And why is that better? Well, because that looks like it's 100% profitable. And in a way it is, because there's no cost incurred until you sell the product. There's no inventory risk either. You're never going to have the equivalent of the millions of copies of E.T. buried in the desert with a digital distribution, because the product doesn't exist until the moment that it's purchased. And this is the sort of thing that Wall Street loves. A product that has no ongoing cost to make any money. So it looks better to the street, even though the amount of money that's made is basically the same. Let's start dividing up that part of the pie. Well, you probably want to market your game, and it's fairly typical to do a 10% marketing campaign. You know, some do more, some do less. That's going to be $5 of your remaining pie. A quick note on percentages. When I talk about percentages, I'm talking about percentages of that gross price, that $50. So when I say 10%, I'm saying 10% of $50, not 10% of that remaining $35. Is that exactly how the publishers are figuring out? No, not always, but it does make the math a little bit easier to work with. You have overhead. This is to pay for things like your HR department and other central groups. Larger companies have relatively large central groups, but they do provide value and they do provide support for your teams. So that all probably works out to another 10%. So now you're down to $25. That's not bad. That's pretty good. Every copy of the game that you sell, you get to spend $25 making it. Pretty good. Well, the problem is you're a public company, right? So as a public company, you've got to worry about the shareholders as well. And they want a margin. They don't want you running this company to break even. They want you making a profit. And they want a fairly significant profit because games are fairly risky, and they want not only return, they want relatively high return. They want something like 30%. So that takes that $25 all the way down to $10. So you've got $10 to play with to make your game. So let's look at that $10. Well, some of that is going to be used for outsourcing and localization, things like that. But let's just pretend for the sake of discussion that it's only going to be used for salary. Well, the reality is that it's not just salary. You also have to pay for things like your people's perks and their office space and their healthcare, their computers and their desks and all those things. And in this case, unlike my perks video, perks does include things like stock options and retirement savings plans and bonuses. A good rule of thumb is to think about everyone's salary as if it's somewhere between 150 and 200% of what it actually is to figure out what they're actually going to cost. So someone that's getting paid $10,000 is probably costing somewhere between $15,000 and $20,000 in reality. So that's what's left. That's what you got to budget with when you're making your game. I use $70 because that's the new price that everyone's talking about. But the reality is you can do the same exercise because most of the costs on the list I just went through are percentages. They're not fixed. You can actually do that with any price. If you run the same numbers with $60, you get $8.57. So going from a $60 game to a $70 game is getting a little bit less than $1.50 extra down at the development side. I'll talk about the $60 or $70 price point at a later date so I can break down a little bit more detail why we don't have $40 games, or at least not very many, when I talk about different business models. HD games remain actually one of the cheaper sources of entertainment. Even if you're only playing a game for 10 hours, still cheaper than a night at the movies. Doesn't compete very well with things like Netflix or a cable subscription. I'm going to keep this one focused and not dig in on the other business models and other ways that games make money. We'll circle back to that at a later date. Hopefully this was informative and gave you an idea of where your money is going. If you found this interesting, give this video a like, share it with your friends, and I'll see you again soon. Thank you.